welcome. In the room, we have Greg, Alex, John, Diane, Evelyn, Corinne, Barry, Drew, myself, and Ernie. That's a good view of the room right there. My opening words are from Wilma Mankiller. She lived from 1945 to 2010, and she was the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation for 10 years in the 1980s, where she did a lot of social activity work. And this is from Wilma Mankiller. The happiest people I've ever met, regardless of their profession, their social standing, or their economic status, are people who are fully engaged in the world around them. The most fulfilled people are the ones who get up every morning and stand for something larger than themselves. They are the people who care about others, who will extend a helping hand to someone in need, or will speak up about an injustice when they see it. That's us.
Excuse me, Joanne, there are a lot of people online that are not muted. We'll have trouble later.
Yeah, are we getting background noises? Yeah. All right. You might want to mute. Okay, announcements. Tuesday evening, that's this Tuesday, the 14th of October, we're going to have our get together, which is our happy hour at Hop Life Brewery, 679 Northwest Enterprise Drive in St. Lucie West. Usually we have our happy hours on Saturdays from 4 to 6. We're doing it on Tuesday from 6 to 8 because they have music bingo. So we hope you'll come for that. You don't need to RSVP, just show up and look for this happy hour sign. Spooktacular Night in the Park, Friday, October 17th. That's next Friday, 6 p.m. to 10, Memorial Park, 300 Southeast Ocean Boulevard. This is kind of the Halloween celebration that the city sponsors in Stewart in Memorial Park. It's a lot of fun. The kids come dressed up for Halloween in costume. The parents show up in costume. We're going to have a tent there. And with our humanist sign up, last year we did it and we had so much activity and so many people got to know who we were. So that's really a great thing. And we're hoping people will sign up and help staff that booth. Just you're handing out candy and people are getting to know us. So that is something we ask you to go online and RSVP for that. So we know what we have for help. That's next Friday, I think. Greg, who do you have signed up now?
You, me, Alex, and Amanda, I think.
I'm going to be in New York.
Oh. Amanda, Alex, and Evelyn, I was counting on you. There we go.
Okay, Amanda, Alex, and Evelyn will be there, but we can always use some more help. So please think about that. It's a lot of fun. The No Kings Rally is going to be Saturday. This is in Port St. Lucie, Saturday, October 18th, from noon to 2 p.m. in front of the Mid-Florida Event Center on Route 1. And this is the same place they had the last rally. So I hope you'll support that. It's just so important to get as many people out there as we can. Also, I want to thank Corinne for letting me know that in Stewart, there's a No Kings Rally. It's going to be held a little bit later, 2:30 to 4:30 at the corner of Canner Highway and Highway 1. So if you're down here. Vera, where is?
58 and 60, the same place as always, 12:30 to 1:30, 1 hour.
12:30 to 1:30 at Vero Beach, a 1 hour rally on 60 and 58, where they usually have them, right? So all the towns are covered, and I just hope we have a good turnout. I think it is going to be a good turnout. I know the number of rallies across the country are like over 2,000 that have been scheduled.
Palm Beach Gardens too.
Palm Beach Gardens, you have the details?
10 a.m. to 12 on PGA Boulevard where we always meet. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Irene. Also, Peacock House. We are having our the Peacock House Art Foundation, 722 Orange Avenue in Fort Pierce. We've secured a room, an instructor to help us. It's $30 a person. It's going to be Tuesday. This is next Tuesday, October 21st. It's in the evening from 6 to 8. So we have, it's a craft session and we're going to be focusing on watercolors. So making animal pictures, preferably a pet, but some people don't have pets. If you don't have a pet, you might have a favorite animal that you would like to paint, like maybe a manatee or a turtle or something like that. So you just have to get a picture and send it to Drew electronically and let him know. So right now, I think we have 14 people who are signed up. We can fit 6 more people if you want to go to that. Did I cover everything? Oh, light refreshments are going to be served courtesy of Humanists of the Treasure Coast. And I think that's everything you need to know about that.
You might want to say that you don't have to have artistic talent to do it.
Yeah, you don't have to have artistic talent. It's a fun get together and see what you come up with.
Yes.
But I suspect there's a lot of artistic talent in this group. You might discover your artistic talent.
Or not.
Let me see. I want to talk about the Majority Project. That's the postcard project that we have. We have some postcards over there. If you'd like to take some of them, you send them to your representative and it lets them know that the majority of people support a lot of the things that we support. And I meant to mention this before. If you aren't here, if you're on Zoom only, and you live a ways away from us, like say South Dakota, just email Amanda at humtc.com and let her know how many you would like, and she will mail them to you. You can do this from anywhere, and you can send them to any legislator you want across the United States.
.org.
Amanda at humtc.org. Thank you. Thank you. It takes a village. It takes a village. I just want to let you know, I've been invited by the Stewart Interfaith Coalition to participate in a Thanksgiving service that's going to be held on November 23rd at Unity in Stewart, 211 Southeast Central Parkway. The theme for this Thanksgiving interfaith service, which I participated in the last one they did 2 years ago, the theme is the courage to be thankful. So I'll be, each representative from different faith groups will be speaking briefly, and I'll have an opportunity to speak as well. So we are at the table and we are in the mix. So another announcement on Saturday, November 1st from noon until 2, we're having a potluck picnic at the Whispering Pines Park in Port St. Lucie. This is going to be, it's 800 Southwest Darwin Boulevard. Everybody brings a dish. We're going to provide, Humanists of the Treasure Coast, Treasure Coast is going to provide sandwiches, beverages, paper plates, utensils, and stuff like that. So just come and hang out for a couple hours in the park. Hopefully we'll have some good weather, and I think the weather is starting to get better. This is November 1st. Just bring a side dish or a snack to share. So that's it for the announcements.
What is the time?
It is from noon until 2.
What park is that?
Whispering Pines Park. We haven't been there before, but it's all been renovated. You know, Greg sets these parks up and he goes and checks them out ahead of time. And he said the park has been renovated. And there's also an area for kids to play, a playground. So it sounds like it's going to be a good place. I will be there.
Bring your kids and your dogs.
I'm sorry, what, Greg?
Bring your kids and your dogs.
Bring your kids and your dogs. Okay. So this morning, our Humanist Secular Moment is being provided by Captain Paul. Captain Paul, you have the floor.
Good morning. I wanted to share several personal experiences and a little history on Indigenous Peoples Day and offer a land acknowledgement. Since it's open discussion today, I thought I would prime the pump. First, the opening verses of the one song that most shaped my view of American history by Nobel laureate Bob Dylan. Oh, my name, it ain't nothing. My age, it means less. The country I come from, they call the Midwest. I was taught and brought up there the laws to abide, and that the country I lived in had God on its side. Oh, the history books tell it. They tell it so well, how the cavalry charged and the Indians fell. The cavalry charged and the Indians died, for the country was young then, with God on its side. Second, in 1977, there was a legal battle over an Indian lands claim in the state of Maine, my home state, mind you. I recall being angry at the Indians and their $81 million settlement that allowed them to buy back 300,000 acres of formerly tribal land. I experienced firsthand how deeply the feeling of white entitlement really runs. Since then, by the way, Maine is one of the handful of states to officially change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day by law. Third, I remember visiting Castillo San Marcos in St. Augustine and standing in the cell where Seminole warrior Osceola was first imprisoned after having been captured nearby under a flag of truce. He subsequently died in captivity in Fort Moultrie on Sullivan's Island in South Carolina. Nowadays, I think of his imprisonment whenever I walk down Osceola Street here in Stewart. By the way, the current leader of the Florida Seminole tribe is Marcellus W. Osceola Jr. So in looking for things to present today, I talked to my new BFF, ChatGPT, for some appropriate words. Here is a land acknowledgement that it suggests, a land acknowledgement from Martin County, Florida. We acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Seminole and Mikosi peoples and the earlier Ice and Yaga peoples who lived along this coast for countless generations. The Seminole and Miccosukee peoples never signed a peace treaty with the United States and never surrendered their sovereignty. They continue to live, work, and lead throughout Florida today. We honor their enduring connection to this land, to the waters and the wildlife, and to living traditions that continue to shape this region. We recognize our shared responsibility to learn from their history, respect their sovereignty, and support Indigenous voices and rights in the present. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Captain Paul. That was a really good humanist secular moment, I think. So first thing I have to do is a bit of a confession. I'm going to blame this on Paul Ivas. We had our program committee meeting and he kept saying, it's Native American Day. It's Native American Day. It's not Native American Day. Native American Day, as it turns out, is around the Thanksgiving timeframe. This is, in fact, as Captain Paul said, Indigenous Peoples Day. So it's a different kind of a celebration. And this particular Indigenous Peoples Day was introduced as an alternative to Columbus Day. So it's specific to this date. And we wanted to have a discussion about Indigenous Peoples Day. And I don't know how controversial it is. I was kind of sad to see that Frances isn't here today. She had to help Liz out in some way, so she was unable to come. But she had sent me a lot of TikTok videos of Indigenous people celebrating. And what was unique about these, and I don't have TikTok, I don't have a way to show them to you. And during the week I said, can we compile these somehow so I can share them with everybody? But it was Indigenous people, not dressed in Indian garb necessarily, but dressed in modern clothing and street clothing of the day today, and doing and dancing joyously, and they were just so enjoyable to watch. And if we can play them at other times, I will. But I don't know how controversial this subject is. So we thought we would have an open discussion and get your thoughts on Indigenous Peoples Day. Diane Morgan, could you please pass her the mic?
Yeah, is it on?
No, I think you have to turn it on.
Okay, I just wanted to just bring up, the Declaration of Independence with its soaring, beautiful, eloquent language. Do we all know what it says about Native Americans in the Declaration of Independence? See,
Probably-
most people don't. But in the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson sets forth about 27 complaints about King George III. Most of them he made up. Some of them are right. But this is one that never gets mentioned, so I thought I would. Talking about the king now. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So it's right there in the good old Declaration of Independence that we have to deal with these merciless savages. I just thought I'd bring that up because it's just not something most people have never read the Declaration of Independence, and it's one of the things I used to actually teach. I spent like a week on it. That's all.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment? Drew?
I wasn't sure what to say, but I was reading something yesterday, and it referred to how the Indians got here. I mean, we all, I think, know that mankind was originated in Africa. And from Africa, they went through Europe and Asia. The Americas were the last land that actually people, human beings, went and lived. And we think the Indians have always been here, but they were new people too.
They were Asians that came in.
The Asians came in. You can figure, but they,
Through the north, through Canada, all the way down to South
Yeah.
America, North America.
Yeah, well, you don't have the mic, so
I'm
everybody
sorry,
can
go
hear you.
ahead.
so-
it's okay, but that's very true. The point is that this is the land that was last developed by people. That's the first thing I was gonna say, and, I don't think Columbus was a horrible person. I think I have admired that they came over across the ocean. And one of the things that people hold against them, and they did bring all this disease and syphilis, but I don't even think they knew what syphilis was and let me put it this way, I don't think they did it purposely. But it certainly was a result of the intermingling of the two peoples. Anyway,
I have to say that I think Columbus was a horrible person.
do you?
But what he and his people did to the Taino Indians, aside from the disease, was slaughter. I mean, they murdered a lot of the Taino Indians, and between the disease and their slaughters, pretty much wiped out that segment of the Indian population.
I didn't know that,
Yeah,
so
not the
I'm
good,
corrected.
not the good guys. Well, you might want to read up about it. That's what I've read about it. Alice, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I grew up in southern Minnesota, and I don't know for sure how many people are aware of the Sioux uprising that happened there in 1862, I think it was. The Sioux, the America had acquired their lands for 2 cents an acre or some idiot thing, and were giving it out to the Northern Europeans with the Homestead Act, etc. So they had put the Indians on reservations. And since, they lost their buffalo, they lost their land, they lost everything, they were desperately in need of just basics, food, etc. And they weren't being supplied, and etc. And so they rebelled in a number of locations very close to where I grew up. And one of my aunts, my mother's brother's wife, her family had been in New Ulm, where one of the major uprisings had occurred, and she had lost a number of family members. This was, of course, before she was born. She was born around the turn of the century, I think. but one of her nephews had written a book about the family and the uprising. It was kind of segmented. It wasn't a great book, but it was really kind of interesting. But it was, eventually they hung like 34 of the Indians in Mankato, and it was truly a mess. And it the gentleman who was in charge of the distribution center for the reservation in St. Peter, I think it was, when the Indians were complaining that they were starving, said, let them eat grass. And so they killed him and stuffed his mouth with grass naturally. And it was just an incredible time for that area. And it was, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 years ago, I was talking to a guy on business who lived in that area too. And I happened to mention that I was from there, and for some reason or other, that uprising came up in the conversation. And he was saying that I think it was his great grandmother had been a very small child, and they had thrown her against a rock, and she had survived, but she was mentally retarded. And so she was raped when she was like 17, and just a total mess from that. So it was it's quite a time in the history there. There's the concept of the Indians as being savages, and I think that in some ways it probably comes from things like that. And I also read a book not too long ago. It was The Heart of Everything There Is. It was the story of Red Cloud's War, which was in the Dakotas in Montana. And it was written by, I don't recall the name of the author, but he was going on notes from some journalist who had interviewed Red Cloud before he died. And so he was trying to put together the story from that. And, it was about Red Cloud's resisting the expansion of the white settlements and the Western movement in Montana. So it's a very interesting history in that part of the country, and certainly very definitely two sides to it. So just wanted to share that with the group.
Thank you. Thank you, Alice. Ernie's going to say something, and then we're going to go to Linda.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what Drew was saying, that we thought that the Indians were here forever, or they've always been here.
Hold your mic closer, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
as far as my knowledge goes, there are three races, large races of mankind, right? Major races: Mongoloid, Negroid, and Caucasoid. And these Asian stock, the Native Americans, they're called, as far as I'm concerned, and also indigenous people. The term Indian, to me, refers to people of India. If the Indians at the time, if the natives American at the time were called Indians, call us Indians, it would have been said. So, but what I believe is that the Mongoloid race, being Eskimos, all the way down through Canada, the indigenous people, the native peoples that went from the Americas through the United States, which is today, through Mexico, all Mongoloid, all the way through South America, were indigenous people. They were all from the Mongoloid race. And that's how I feel about that. I don't say Indians anymore. That's gone.
Okay, we're going to go to Linda. We're going to go to Linda now. Go ahead, Linda.
So I was just going to say, I just feel like I am so empty of true knowledge about the indigenous peoples of our country. I learned some things in school, but I just don't think we ever got exposed to the whole picture. And, you know, and now that I'm older, I don't remember most of it anyway, but I feel like it's just a sad commentary on our country. And it's just kind of rubbing our noses in it when we hear that Trump is not going to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. He's going to raise Columbus from the ashes. And, you know, some states have changed Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't think Florida has officially done it, but maybe taken a couple of steps in that direction, but nothing meaningful. So I feel sad about my own ignorance about the history and have added it to my retirement bucket list to learn more about it. But yeah, I just wonder these days in schools, do teachers feel empowered to teach the true story, or are they being, you know, scrutinized, and is this being whitewashed as well?
I think one of the reasons that it's good for us to have a program with this subject matter is to raise awareness, because the current administration is trying to dismiss and remove this history, not only of Blacks, but also Indigenous people. So
Yeah.
I think that's why we need to, organizations like ours need to keep an awareness and a high profile as much as we can about these issues and these people. Diane Morgan, you have the mic.
When I worked for the Census Bureau for many years, I helped write some of the instruments. We always ask people to self-identify. And we know pretty much now that race is an artificial construct. There's no such thing as an African gene or a European gene. There are genes for blue eyes and genes for that sort of thing. And the idea of these three races has long been discredited. That was something I was taught back in the 1950s, I think, but I don't think people talk like that anymore. And as for the names of, when I lived in Oklahoma, most of the people there wanted to prefer the term Indian, and they've done surveys on this, and people prefer different things, but most people prefer being called by their tribal name: Sioux, Apache, Miccosukee. The official name of the Seminoles, for example, I'm going to read it to you because it's a little bit complicated, is the federally recognized tribes. There is the Seminole tribe of Florida, one, the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, and the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida. And that is the name that they chose for themselves. So again, I think we have to be really sensitive about how people want to be referred to, and not slap a big label on them when we don't have to, and just understand that people have different preferences, and just try to be respectful of those, what they choose.
My sociologist daughter says the same thing. No such thing as race, Ma.
Yeah, it's a construct.
Well, that's wrong. There is three major races, three major, and the rest are sub races. Oh, I told you what they were. Nobody understands that? They have different hair.
All right, we're gonna go to John. We're gonna go, John has his hand up. We're gonna go to John. Thank you.
I just want to say something about Columbus. Columbus was a man of his time. And in his time, everybody invaded everybody else if they could get away with it. Genghis Khan slaughtered huge numbers of people going across Asia and Europe. And all of them in constant wars and invasions, subjugations. It's just gone on throughout human history. It's not, well, of course, by our lights, it's not very desirable. It's not very laudable. Unfortunately, it's the way things have been. And Columbus came over here hoping to get treasure, land, slaves, anything he could get. That's the way Europeans thought. That's the way they were doing. So well, I don't have anything laudable to say about Columbus. He certainly wasn't very nice to the people he encountered over here, of course, but of course no one else was either. So anyway, that's kind of the way it goes. I don't know what else to say about it. So
Thank you, John. Oh, you want to pass the mic to Drew?
I was gonna add two more things. One is that you talked about Frances and her TikTok. And you have to be reminded that the Indians, of course they dance, but that's a universal thing. Same with music. Dancing is, you see it in every population, and it's a way of, people expressing their joy in living. And certainly the Indians, it's one thing we recognize, and of course the costumes. The other thing I was going to say is just like Captain Paul, I grew up on 5812 Osceola Road for 20 years, so I very easy could spell that. And I'm not a good speller, but I knew that one. It took me a long time to realize who Osceola was, but I knew that's where I lived.
Wow. All right. Back to Diane.
Okay.
Yeah. Want to mention again that the word mongoloid is not, this is from the internet, is not a scientifically recognized or valid category. The concept is an obsolete and offensive racial grouping based on discredited theories of biological race from the 18th and 19th centuries. These are not terms that any scientist uses anymore.
Okay, anybody else? I wanted to ask Mary about the Dakotas. A while back, I had read some information about the plight of the Dakotas on the reservations. And I'm not sure, I apologize, for North Dakota or South Dakota, but I was thinking, and it may be part of both, where the Dakota reservations are. Mary, do you have any insight or information about the Dakota Indians in your area?
Well, what specifically?
What their condition is, what their condition is on their reservations.
Well, I think they have high unemployment. Health care, is provided through the government, and I would guess that they probably don't have access to a lot of really good medical practitioners and hospitals. I know some people live away, maybe 3-4 hours from a major highway or hospital. So that's a concern. Housing is better than it used to be. You see people driving maybe better cars than they used to be 40 years ago. The casinos that have all developed in that area really have brought some wealth and some better conditions to the people. So a lot of them do seek employment at the casinos, and usually every tribe has a casino somewhere on the reservation. So it's not good, at all, what I would say. We find that more Native Americans are incarcerated than the percentage of white people. So, they struggle, no question about it.
Thank you. And Captain Paul, up in Maine, you have the Passamaquoddy.
Yeah.
Right? And do you have any understanding of how that group is doing? That tribe?
Not really. I mean,
they're way up on northeast.
Yeah, they're way down east. Yeah, but there is more in the middle of the state around Old Town, which is also the home of the University of Maine. There's I think their Penobscot Indians have a reservation, and they're known for things like canoes and basket weaving. So there have been some attempts to help them have local crafts and market them. But the Indian lands thing did help a lot because they were able to, they were given money to buy property. So no property was taken by eminent domain, but they were able to buy a lot of property adjacent to their population centers and trade some land that they owned way in the North Woods, away from where they lived. So you know, I think they've done much better since the 70s and the Indian land claim. And as someone mentioned, casinos, there are several casinos in Maine, and that helps. But it's always you know, they're always on the margin, I think. We toured, my sister and I toured the sites of the Sioux Indian Wars in South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming. But we didn't make a particular point of going to the reservations, though, to, you know, chime in on how ignorant we all tend to be of what's really going on. One thing I did see recently, though, I just wanted to bring up, I love the thing Diane brought up about the Declaration of Independence. I was just reading a little piece about King George and said, you know, we have this really kind of distorted idea of King George. He was king for about 60 years, and he really wasn't a total basket case. And one of his unhappinesses with the revolution was just the effrontery, of course, that people would, you know, not accept his rule. But also he figured that the crown had spent millions of pounds protecting the colonies from the Indians, and that the colonists were just not grateful for what the crown had done to protect their hides, basically. So, you know, just a view from the other side of the pond.
Thank you. In the state of Connecticut, speaking of casinos, we had two major tribes, the Mohegan Indians and the Pequot Indians. Now, the Pequot Indians and the Mohegan Indians traditionally were severe enemies. I mean, they were extreme enemies. They killed each other. They hated each other. But they both had interest in Connecticut. They both had their tribes originating in the state of Connecticut. So they both wanted to have casinos. So then there was a fight about the casinos. Who's going to get to build a casino, and how far apart do they have to be? And it ended up, you know, vying for lands and property, and they were just fighting still today, all the time. So they each got their casinos, and the casinos are about, I'm going to say 15 miles apart. So we have the Foxwoods Casino and the Mohegan Casino. Yeah. So I think it's just very interesting that to this day, I think at this point in time, they possibly work together on certain things, but they took very different views on how to support their tribes. The Foxwoods Casino, they got monies, and when they started to earn monies from the casinos, and they do earn a lot of money, make a lot of money, distributed it to their tribe members in large amounts of money. And so many of those tribe members ended up getting into all kinds of trouble with drugs, alcohol, getting arrested, on and on and on. The Mohegan tribe community had very limited financial support to their tribal members, but they required them to have to work in some aspect of the community to support the tribe. And that group fared much better in terms of not getting into trouble with the law. I mean, it was just a different philosophical life ways of how to support tribal members. That was interesting. So I just want to share that little story with you. Alice, you have your hand up.
Yeah, my sisters and I took a Rhodes Scholar trip in the area of the Pine Ridge Reservation in Southwest South Dakota. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And it was interesting that the local resources for it was a Lutheran pastor who we had grown up with in this little town in Minnesota. So it was kind of an interesting trip. But they went into, you know, what was going on in the tribe and what resources were available and what they were working on, etc. And there was a lot of they were trying to instill new farming techniques and new crops and et cetera. So there was a lot of work in that direction that I think was improving the diets, which was one of the really critical things there. And what else? There was, financial support for housing and that sort of thing that they were supporting. So it's these areas. I don't know. I think they're fairly successful. I sort of keep track, but not real closely. So that was sort of the focus of
Yeah.
what was going on there. And of course, the casino.
I think the other thing with the Mohegan tribe is they focused on educational benefits. They wanted to see all of their tribe members be well educated. Mary, I see you have your hand up, and then we're gonna go to Karen, and I think Juanita's trying to get her sound going, but she's not having any luck with that. I can't adjust it, Juanita. It has to happen on your end. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
but I want to raise my hand on Richard's computer. This is
Oh,
Richard's
okay.
computer. So-
Okay, so we'll go to Mary, then Karen, then you. Go ahead, Mary.
Sure. I just wanted to mention that economic development on the reservation is really kind of hampered because the tribes have their own court system and because they are, separate nations, and they can make laws and they can take property or do whatever they kind of want in some respects. They don't have a lot of the rights and things that we have as far as protecting property. So a lot of industry does not want to go on the reservations because the tribe could decide to take over maybe or do something about their business. And so you'll find that we don't have a lot of economic development because a lot of businesses won't move on and take that chance. And I don't know that would ever come to true, but it's still a concern they have. So will there ever be good economic development? Certainly in our tribes here in South Dakota, probably not.
Thank you. Thank you for that additional information. Karen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think it was 2017. We took a trip with our grandchildren and daughter and her husband to the Grand Canyon, and we had a tour. And the woman that was leading the tour was a young woman. She had graduated from college. She was, I believe, a Navajo Indian woman, and so she was telling us about the things that went on in this day. At least back in 2017 in the Navajo Nation. And it was really kind of shocking to us. One thing that she mentioned was that if a male Navajo decided to divorce his wife, she was just put outside the Navajo Nation. I mean, physically, to be on her own. And the children were left with her, what she owned and everything else, which was kind of shocking. But I mean, she was a Navajo herself, so I guess she knew what she was talking about. And the other thing that struck us is that the women had to walk, I can't remember how many miles it was, but to get drinking water. They had wells there that they could use for the land, but actually clean drinking water, they had to go out and get it every single day, which was just surprising how many miles they walked for that. And so anyway, we learned a lot about the Navajo Nation, and it was just really surprising that they hadn't caught up with modern times. The other thing is that my family came over, one of my branches of the family came over in 1624. And my grandfather, probably 10, 11, 12 times removed, was an executive for the West India Company. His title was the court messenger. And they had, they had slaves and everything else back then. So I don't think they handled the Indians too well. But anyway, he and one of his sons were murdered by the Indians. And as Joanne knows, I write a journal every 4 times a year about this family. I've been doing it for 13 years. But anyway, at the end of this thing, when I was telling him about he was, murdered, but I bravely said he probably deserved it. So, which nobody said anything. I'm still president and journal editor because no one else wants to do it. Anyway, that's my tale of the Indians.
Thank you. Karen and I have lots of things in common, one of them being our love of genealogy research. Linda, you're next, and then we're going to go to Juanita and then Evelyn in the room. Linda.
Okay, I was just going to say, in my quest to learn more about what's shaped this whole world and specifically looking at indigenous peoples, it's interesting that some of the forces at play that could shape some of the health disparities that are seen with on Indian reservations. They've started to do some epigenetic studies, and there's one that was published with Alaskan indigenous peoples where they actually look at their DNA and at some of the chemical groups that sort of decorate their DNA and have control over which genes are expressed. And some of these are pointing to certain sites on their DNA where it's causing genes to be expressed that can have negative health outcomes. So it's not just the history and the culture, it's also at the molecular level of their DNA. This epigenetic field is so fascinating. It's amazing how, historical trauma can actually be handed down from generation to generation and have an impact on the health of our, the current population. We're learning more, but it's not there yet, but it's, I think, super interesting.
That makes me think of the Gazans.
Yeah, yes.
Wow. Juanita, you're next, and then we're going to go to Evelyn.
For many years after we moved here, maybe in the late 80s or early 90s, we have gone to the Florida Folk Festival in White Springs in Stephen Foster State Park. And they honor Native American Indians, and they have a Seminole camp established for the festival. And the Indians are showing their crafts and their tiki huts and play music. And Jim Billy is a wonderful folk singer. And Jim Billy was, we listened to him for years, and he was very important in Florida gambling because in 1979, he got them to open, and he is a very advanced Seminole, and he got them to open the first major casino. And in 81, they were sued for illegalness by Floridians wanting to establish their own or something, I don't know. And he got really very strong support from excellent lawyers and won the case, so allowing them to do it. And he had established a bigger and better gambling casino with rules and honesty that other tribes, I guess there were other tribes around the United States, but his model there has really established Florida as a model of how to run these casinos. And there was perhaps, he had tribal concerns within him, within his tribe. And so there was some tussle there of how the money is spent. But in Blue Cypress Swamp is where it's an excellent straight south of here, mid-state perhaps. And there's a wonderful museum, and it's excellent. It's called the Seminole Indian Museum in Cypress Swamp, the Atatiki Museum. And they have established this on a cypress swamp. And there's a trail they've made through the cypress swamp. You can walk a wooden trail through a cypress swamp, and they have lots of wonderful exhibits all along the way, placards telling about the swamp and how the tribe, escaped. They're the only tribe that has really never been captured by the US military, and about the wars there. But they also have wonderful museum that has all their native customs, and you should all go down and visit it. It's a wonderful day to see that. And Jim Billy, we have some folk songs. You should play some his folk songs. We could show you some of those too. But it's quite an amazing story, and I think you all might benefit from getting to know them better that way, the local people, because they're very proud. And we also learned that in Blue Cypress Lake is a big lake in our county, in Indian River County. And we had canoed there for many years, and we thought it was so wonderful and quiet, and we could get away from our hectic jobs in a minute. And so we'd go out and camp all night and then wake at 5 in the morning to see the sunrise over the Blue Cypress Lake. And we've written a book about it, but when we finally discovered that they aren't going to develop it, it's actually the headwaters lake to the St. Johns River and goes 300 miles north. And this is an isolated place. And when in 1879, it was labeled, what was it, morass, uncharted morass. And the tribes were hiding there around the lake. And we found there's all kind of Indian artifacts and pottery shells and things that we found. And we took them to the museum and have verified. And they said, well, we have too many of those. So we thought they'd want them, but no. But it's part of the history that we've described in our book, Blue Cypress, Reflections of Blue Cypress Lake. That's an Audubon published book, and all proceeds go to Audubon. So anyway,
Thank you,
little
Juanita.
plug.
I like this information. My daughter's coming down from Connecticut next week, and maybe this is someplace I can take her for a day. We can go hang out up there.
You can rent a boat to get out and tour the lake.
I've done that.
Wonderful.
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. That's what do they call them? The things that skim on top of the water?
Oh, no, you don't want an airboat.
An airboat?
No,
I went
no.
I
No,
went on
don't.
an airboat.
Well, that's so disturbing to the wildlife. You would like to take just a pontoon boat, and you can get 5 on a pontoon boat that you can rent.
Good to know.
Yeah.
We're going to go to Evelyn now, and then we're going to go to Drew. Evelyn.
Well, excuse me, as many of you know, I worked at a community college outside Boston, and one of my colleagues had a husband who was a physician, and he not volunteered, he was paid to work at a reservation in South Dakota. So she came out when the snow was not high and visited him, and she said that she tried to get into a community college there, and they were very reluctant to have her visit. So she said she just had to try so hard. So she said, now this was a story from when I was working, and she was working as well, so probably the 1990s, before casinos. So she said, I think she did eventually get in, but she said they were just very suspicious of her being a white person and not wanting to even let her visit the community college there. And she also said that she traveled by herself outside the reservation to some national monument. And she said when she came back, it was dark, it was night, and she said she felt as though she was traveling, driving in an inner city because there was such crime, and she really didn't feel safe, and she is really an adventurer. So that's my perception of her perception of a reservation in South Dakota in the 1990s, but I'm sure, I hope things have changed.
pass it to Drew, please. Thank you, Evelyn.
Well, actually, I have two questions. The first one is, in a reservation, I'm probably very ignorant. I mean, I'm not sure. It's a piece of land, Indians own it. Can an individual Indian own a piece of the land, or is it all community owned? That's one question. And then I forgot her name, but I wasn't sure what genetics is it that you were talking about? If you could explain what the definition of that is?
Yeah, Linda, can you explain the definition of that, the word that you were?
Yeah, so epigenetics is like an extra layer of control of gene expression. So you have your DNA sequence make up your genes. There's lots of intervening sequences as well. Without getting too deep in the weeds, what's been discovered is that there are several chemical groups, like methyl groups, that are attached to your DNA, and they have a role to play in indicating which genes are expressed. And so it's been shown that that epigenetics layer is impacted by um, things that are not necessarily biologic that you know, that our human organisms undergo, like historical trauma. There's been a lot of studies, even passing down propensities for things like substance abuse and things like that. Some of that has been shown to be controlled by epigenetic control. So it's like extra genetic. It's not necessarily the base pairs of your DNA, but it's these extra chemical groups that are on there that have a role to play. It's that field's been around probably for a couple decades, but it's really exploding now.
Thank you.
I know the answer to the question.
Where am I getting all that tinkling noise from?
The question is to whether individual Native Americans can own land on a reservation. It's really complicated. There are two systems. One is called allotment system and one is called the fee simple system. In the allotment system, which is an historical system, they cannot, and it's really more controlled by the federal government than anything else. They can own, and it got all mixed up with heirs and factionalism, and it became a real mess. They can also own the property with a fee simple thing, in which individuals can own and trade and sell their own land, and there aren't any restrictions on that. So it depends on in what way they're inhabiting the land, by allotment or by fee simple. It's real complicated. It's a mess, in other words. It's all, going back to the 19th century and how they divided it up, and it became really complicated.
Thank you, Diane. All right, anybody else? Mary.
I have a cute little story to tell you, so I won't take too long. My ancestors moved into Dakota Territory way back, in the 1860s. And at that time, they had a sod house. And at that time, Native Americans would sometimes stop at their house. And the man would give them some food and they'd be on their way. But they were frightened. Anyway, one day the man was gone and the woman was there with her little boy, and the door flew open and three young Native American men entered the house. And one of them walked over and took the child from her arms, turned around and walked for the door. When he got to the door, he turned around, facing her, took two little moccasins out of his pocket, put them on the feet, and gave her back the little boy. And I think that's just a cute little story.
That is a cute little story. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Some positive stories.
That's right.
Always a good thing. All right. Good discussion. I think we've, Ed, you want to say something?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. One's a personal story. I grew up in North Texas, had relatives in Oklahoma and New Mexico, which we used to go visit. And I can remember driving through the Indian reservations in these states and being absolutely terrified. Watching Western Indian, cowboy and Indian things on TV. I just, it terrified me. I could remember getting down on the floor of the car because the Indians were going to see these white people driving through their reservations and the arrows were going to start coming through the window. It was terrible when I think about it. The treatment of the indigenous people in the United States and slavery, I think, are our two biggest sins of America. That doesn't make me hate America. I love America, but I think those are the two of the biggest things. Third, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that Hitler expressed appreciation for the way the Americans got rid of, eliminated the indigenous people in America. That's, like I said, is that fake news? I don't know. I heard that, I've heard that, but I think it's a shame the way they've been treated. That's all.
I was driving, this would be 2019, we were driving through Arizona and we went through a reservation area and the poverty was so evident. The housing was, you know, there's no landscaping around the house. The houses look like shacks with tarps over the roof and, you know, water pumps out in the yard and broken down cars in the yard. And the whole reservation as we drove through it was like that. It's very sad to see.
Where was that?
Arizona. Yeah.
And a lot of our European diseases killed a lot of them.
Yeah. Good.
Well, just maybe a last remark is remember the Indians with their language were very crucial in World War II, passing messages. Thanks to that, nobody else could understand what they were saying, but it was a big help in what they did.
The code breakers.
The code breakers.
The code breakers, yeah. And somebody was saying, I think it was on the Wednesday night group, that they've.
The code talkers.
The code talkers. Thank you, Paul. If somebody was saying on the Wednesday night group that ability is still available and they have never declassified it because they're still using that ability. Is that what we heard on Wednesday night, Paul? Do you recall that?
I may have heard that, but I couldn't verify it to be true.
Yeah.
I mean, I see no reason why it's not true.
Yeah, somebody had said that it's still being used. Well, I think it was a good discussion. I'm glad we covered this day, Indigenous Peoples Day. We have a segment in our newsletter we call the Book Nook, where people can recommend books to others. And if you know of any good books, and this makes me think of Linda's comment about that doesn't feel like she knows a lot about the Indigenous people. If you know of any good books to recommend, please send the titles to me, joanne@humtc.org, and we'll list them in our newsletter in the Book Nook section. All right. Thank you, everybody, for all your comments. We learn something every time we meet, for sure. Next week, we're going to have a video by journalist John Bywin. The title of the video is "The Lie That Invented Racism." I think it's a pretty good video. It's pretty intriguing. I hope you'll come in and tune in for that. Also on Wednesday night, we have our open discussion, open mic, 7 to 8 o'clock, Zoom only. Join us for that as well. My closing words are from Tecumseh, Shawnee Chief. So, live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Trouble no one about their religion. Respect others in their view and demand that they respect yours. Love your life. Perfect your life. Beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. Prepare a noble death song for the day when you go over the great divide. Always give a word or a sign of salute when meeting or passing a friend, even a stranger, when in a lonely place. Show respect to all people and grovel to none. When you arise in the morning, give thanks for the food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason for giving thanks, the fault lies only in yourself. Abuse no one and no thing, for abuse turns the wise ones to fools and robs the spirit of its vision. Tecumseh, an American Indian.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Could you send that to everybody too, please?
I can do something to get it to people. It might be in the newsletter or, yeah.
That's
I'll
beautiful.
certainly send it to you, Juanita.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was hoping you were gonna read it in his native tongue.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
right. I can't even speak in my own tongue, never mind. I get tongue-tied sometimes. You notice that? Anyway, thanks, everybody. Thanks for your input. We'll see you on Wednesday night, or we will see you next Sunday. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to be here next Sunday. I'm going to be up in New York, in Brooklyn. And Drew and Tony are going to be the hosts. Take care, everybody.
Have a good week.
Safe journey.
Thank you. Yeah, with the, with the air traffic controller situation, we were almost going to cancel, but we're going to tough it out. What's the worst could happen? No, we don't know.
Delays.
Delays. We don't mind a delay. We just want the plane to land safely. That's the thing.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.